This week, shutting down the net, speeding up border checks, and completing the circle of life.
Oh, everyone calm down, we're here.
The backup has arrived.
Stand by, please. Stand by, Alexandra Palace. Switch out, regions, switch out. And catch the palace.
This is Alexandra Palace, the birthplace of television. On the 2nd of November 1936, the world's first regular, high-definition public television service was broadcast from there. TV joined radio and the printed word in bringing us entertainment and information, to bring us together and broaden our minds. But these days, information has another way of getting out. Social media has given us all the power to say whatever we want and show whatever we want, and that has caused several governments big problems. Some countries like China, Iran and Saudi Arabia block news and discussions about topics that they don't want their people to hear about. But many more countries will sporadically block social media sites, slow down internet speeds, or even switch off net access altogether to try and stifle unrest and dissent at sensitive times. And the country that shuts down net access the most is India. And by far the bulk of those shutdowns are in the disputed Himalayan region of Kashmir. This week, the Indian government removed the special status of the part of the region that it administers. It was an unprecedented move that's seen schools closed, demos banned, leaders arrested, and, of course, the internet shut down. A couple of weeks ago, David Reed went to Kashmir to find out more about the regular shutdowns that were happening there. As it turned out, he was one of the last foreign journalists to be allowed in.
Kashmir might look peaceful, it isn't. Authorities here are fighting a long-running insurgency. Many Kashmiris and others say India's an occupier. Almost 50,000 have died in decades of violence. Even before this week's clampdown, authorities regularly shut down the mobile internet, as I found during a recent visit.
The business is the online food delivery service. It is the first online food delivery startup in Kashmir.
More than 40 times this year, Kashmir's mobile internet's been cut off or throttled back. Not great for sales of chicken wraps or spicy mutton curry. What do you do when the internet is off?
Every time we have to call the customers, we call our database customers. We try to send them SMSs that we are, serviceable. Last time we made these pamphlets and we distributed in colleges and schools. It's going back to 1950s and working without internet, and it's like internet is a very important part of your life right now.
Normally it's only the mobile internet that's cut off, not domestic broadband. So why don't you just use broadband?
It's too expensive. Broadband is expensive than our 4G, and everyone can't afford a broadband connection at home.
The measure's unpopular, and there are suspicions it's less about security than just stifling dissent.
They are claiming that we are the largest democracy in the world, but this is not the democracy, because you can't suppress the voices of this dissent in the democratic system.
I headed over to speak to Kashmir's police. Interestingly, their internet policy seems to be less about foiling militant operations, but more about preventing propaganda and rumour.
We are here fighting a proxy war. We see a lot of content from our neighbourhood coming here and actually trying to create a propaganda, which is absolutely not correct, and at times they lead to serious law and order problem.
Kashmiris joke that the internet is just a switch on some bureaucrat's desk, and there is a feeling that it's all a bit too easy. There's no transparency. Some shutdowns in India are frivolous. According to this tracker run by a Delhi-based NGO, the mobile internet was cut off 30 times in Rajasthan last year. No insurgency there, and at least 4 of those were to prevent cheating in police recruitment exams. Authorities say shutdowns are signed off by magistrates and audited. We have to take their word for it. The audits are secret.
Our tracker is built around exposing the reality of internet, the quantum of internet shutdowns in India. I think what we demand from the government is transparency. There is no government published data on how many shutdowns have happened. But we also have to rely on media sources and citizen reportage. India is probably one of the strongest democracies to utilize this policy, and which is problematic.
India cuts off the internet more than any other country. Okay, the population here is enormous, and much of the time India's internet has been pretty open. Select censorship, but without a China-style content firewall. That said, critics contend that countries are taking India's lead, cutting off comms in a crisis. By the way, they also say shutdowns actually increase violence.
What you're doing, if anything, in curtailing access to the internet is disallowing people the ability to organize, again, peaceful demonstrations which are well within the confines of the law. It creates a disrupted communication environment which potentially induces more chaos, more violence.
This week's clampdown has meant a complete communications blackout. Internet, phone, TV. The UN Special Rapporteurs called it draconian. Kashmir's been gagged, cut off from the rest of the world.
That was David Reed in Kashmir. Now, of course, there are many parts of the world, including here in the UK, where governments don't just shut down the media or the internet to try and control public conversation. But that also has consequences.
It was an attack streamed live on the internet by someone apparently determined to use social media to spread a message of hate.
If you can't control what's being uploaded, stop the uploads. During the Christchurch massacre, thousands upon thousands of videos were being uploaded to Facebook and uploaded to YouTube, and you could see tens of thousands of views. People all across the world watching this content.
We will look at the role social media played and what steps we can take. They are the publisher, not just the postman.
We know that that content will have radicalised people. And they were sort of saying, oh, well, it's a problem with our AI. Our AI isn't recognising this content. But then they should have just shut it off.
Carol Cadwallader is the journalist who brought the Facebook and Cambridge Analytica story to the mainstream. And she's a major voice in the new Netflix documentary that tells the story of how users' data was gathered and analysed to try and influence elections. She's campaigned to get Facebook to work harder to stop the spread of violent content, hate speech, and fake news across its network.
Everything that has sort of enabled us to develop as a country and to become the society that we have is directly under threat now.
Instead of shutting websites down, authorities in the West go for the financial jugular.
The settlement imposes a record-breaking $5 billion penalty.
This fine was for deceiving users about how it used their data. But if the threat of fines doesn't pull Facebook and other social media platforms into line, might we start to see even more countries block access completely? Carol Cadwallader thinks that it's still possible to avoid both fines and censorship.
One of the really amazing statistics about Facebook that I heard is that 1 in 7 people that Facebook employs to do content moderation works on German content. And that's because Germany has very strong laws around hate speech, and if you don't get it down, you're going to be fined. I think it was my colleague at The Guardian, Alex Hearn, he worked out what it would cost to have the same levels of German content moderation all across the world, and it would cost Facebook something like 0.5% in profit.
Hello and welcome to the Week in Tech. It was the week in which British Airways passengers were left stranded after 300 flights were delayed or cancelled because of IT problems. Ouch. 500,000 bank customers were asked to change their PIN for their Monzo bank cards after IT problems. Ouch. And Japan's newest flying car took off for the first time without anyone in it and sort of bumped back down to earth again. Everyone standing well back there. Better work to do. There was light at the end of the car tunnel though. Hyundai unveiled its plan to make a solar car that's up to 60% powered by the sun. It follows recent announcements from Toyota that it will offer solar panels for its hybrid Prius and from new manufacturer Lightyear. Britain's NHS is to set up an artificial intelligence unit to help work out patterns in clinical trials, existing treatments and patient flows. This is the Russian military's new stealth drone. The Okhotnik, which means hunter, took a 20-minute flight but found nothing. Samsung's revealed its biggest smartphone to date. The Galaxy Note 10 Plus comes with a new gesture-controlled S Pen. It supports 5G and has a depth-sensing camera on the back that might help you measure the hole in your pocket if you buy one. And finally, let's all wear a tail. Researchers in Japan say their four-motored creation helps with balance, climbing, carrying stuff, and looking like a monster. It's the future. Get over it.
The history and the politics surrounding Israel are, of course, highly contentious. But its situation in the world has made it a focal point for new security tech startups. Stephen Beckett has met a company whose technology looks set to rapidly change the way that borders and checkpoints are policed around the world.
Physical borders and checkpoints have been around for almost as long as civilization itself. But one thing that goes hand in hand with intensive checks is queuing, potentially long waits while each vehicle is manually inspected for contraband or even security threats. I'm here in Tel Aviv to see how one company is using artificial intelligence to rethink the way those checks are done.
Introducing UVI, a first-of-its-kind advanced threat recognition system that scans the underside of road vehicles.
Dramatic video aside, the UVI system is already being used in borders and checkpoints around the world. Its key selling point? The promise of detecting unexpected items under moving vehicles faster than any human possibly could. The question is, how can they do that without compromising on safety?
So this is a sort of way you might do a normal inspection, either down on the ground or with a mirror that lets you see under the car. And from here I can see the edges quite well, but the middle is a bit of a mystery to me.
Of course, professional security would have more knowledge and hopefully a better torch, but without raising the car up they would still struggle to see in as much detail as the system can. Hidden under the ground are 5 high-res cameras that activate when a vehicle is detected. In about a second they take thousands of photos that are then combined to create a high-res model of the underside of the vehicle.
As you can see, a very high resolution.
You can read the writing.
We can easily read that this Volkswagen was made in Poland.
Doing checks by eye like this could still take a human a long time. That's why the real idea is to have deep learning algorithms do it for you, automatically analysing the images for anything that shouldn't be there.
This is a typical 300 grams bomb size, okay? And this is a 1 kilo. Now it's scanning for threat. So you can see the automatic detection. It found the 3 boxes.
Yeah, and I mean these ones are, I think I would have spotted those ones, but this one down here.
This one was very hard. We didn't spot it before the system did.
Just like our own fingerprints, tiny details in the images, like the part numbers and even small scratches, can be used to create a unique identifier for each vehicle. That means that even if you were to say, change your number plate, the system should still recognise your car if it's seen it before. AI-powered systems like this are only as good as the data they're trained on. Here to create that data, UVI had to hire hundreds of rental cars from around their office. Scanning those cars taught the system what a normal undercarriage is supposed to look like. And knowing what normal looks like means the system can do more than spot contraband. At our next stop, they're using the system to help keep Tel Aviv's buses on the road. When a bus leaves the depot, they drive over a UVI detector. Just like with the cars, the huge image that comes out can be scanned for unexpected items. But it can also spot if there might be a maintenance issue, like an oil leak or other damage. The latest version of the system uses even more cameras to create a 360-degree view of an entire vehicle, so not just the undercarriage, but the sides too. That means that things like scratches, dents and tyre damage could also be picked up. Earlier this year, car companies Volvo and Toyota revealed they were investing in the tech. And so in the future, we could see it being used when you buy, sell or even rent a car. You can imagine that might save, or even cause, a few arguments with hire companies. In the meantime though, security is still the main focus of the system. The question is, do we feel comfortable handing over this kind of responsibility to an AI?
Here at the Barbican's Life Rewired season, a rehearsal is taking place, but it's no ordinary rendition.
An array of cameras is tracking the musicians' every move. Now from there, artificial intelligence is analysing what's being seen, so it could be deciding on what gender, what ethnicity or what age it thinks someone is, but it's also keeping track of their emotions.
This experience is meant to illustrate the difference between what a machine sees and what a human can see. And right now, there's clearly quite a big difference.
Sight Machine uses a mix of old computer algorithms and cutting-edge AI, much like that used by self-driving vehicles or for reading biometric data. It then recreates its findings in a picture or as text. Yet,
first of all, it thinks David is between 4 and 6 years old, and then it suggests David could be up to 100 years old. There's definitely something not quite accurate here.
You know, I have to say, every time that I've looked up at the screen and AI has been tracking my emotions, it doesn't have anything to do with what, at least what I think I know about myself or what's happening right at that moment.
To AI, emotion comes down to certain premises.
One, there's such thing as emotions, right? Which seems self-evident, but if you look, throughout history, different cultures and different times have used very different languages and very different taxonomies to describe what we talk about as emotions, right? Also, typically in computer vision systems, there's 6 emotions, fear, happiness, sadness, disgust, anger. And that is pretty questionable as well. I think if we imagine our emotional lives, they're far more complicated than that.
Trevor has worked with this tech a lot, and he says he wasn't anticipating greater accuracy. He's not trying to rubbish all the good that AI can do, though, merely to highlight what he views as the pitfalls.
I think we want to have a lot of faith in technologies that are going to be smarter than us, that are going to be more objective than us, that are going to be fairer than us. And I think what the performance shows is that we're very far away from that.
Of course, this system doesn't represent the ability of all AIs, and not everything it suggests is wrong. But many of the decisions it makes are based on limited opinions or factors. And of course, the machines will keep learning. This is just a reminder that when it comes to emotion or some more nuanced concepts, AI's not a patch on us yet.
Brilliant, that was Lara and her quartet. I'm on a different stage right now. This one belongs to the Alexandra Palace Theatre, recently renovated after laying derelict for 80 years. And what an amazing space it is, don't you think? In the 1930s, this was also a cinema, and that's where we're going next, to the latest box office blockbuster.
The idea of embracing something that took what technology has to offer to create a photoreal version of this story as told through the eyes of what would feel like a documentary, a live-action documentary crew, was an exciting prospect for us. Disney even refers to this as a live-action film, which is a bit misleading, but I think tonally correct, because we did use those techniques, and hopefully it does feel like something that was actually photographed, even though every shot, with the exception of one actually, but every shot in the film is completely computer generated, and every performance is animated. We build it using tools to create essentially a completely digital 3D environment, and then you have 3D digital animals that are in that environment. And that's how you would do the final render of it, whether it was a Marvel movie or whether it was a film like this. But since we already have those assets, we could bring that into this consumer-facing VR system using, in this case, the Unity game engine. And so because we now had this environment and we had VR, we could have people enter into the digital set and be able to walk around and look at it as though we were really on a scout. And allowed me to hire somebody like Caleb Deschanel, who's a great cinematographer who I've known for a long time, wanted to work with, but had no background in visual effects. And we made it very user-friendly, so he could just walk around with us, with the production designer, with the visual effects supervisor, with the director, look at the set, say, okay, we should probably put the camera here, and let's see the lion rehearse the scene, and the AD would hit the button and run the animation cycle, and we'd watch, just like you would on a regular set. He'd think about where he'd want the light. We'd move the sun if we had to. Move some trees around, and so we had, a full live-action film crew in VR operating camera equipment as though it were a live-action set. But we always tried to limit ourselves in what you could achieve in real life, and that's what gave it the aesthetic that people are reacting so well to right now.
Oh, all right, let me see what we're dealing with here. It's a lion!
Phase one is this whole virtual shoot where we do rough animation, we build rough versions of the sets. They kind of look like rough video games, and you put it all together and you shoot every shot. And now you have a complete edit of the whole movie with dialogue and temporary music, and you really have every shot. And it's not just a study. These are choices that John and Caleb and the other filmmakers were putting into place. Every one of those shots is sort of like a 3D file, like a data file that comes here to MPC London. And we have a layout department that works out all the space and imports all those cameras and lines it all up and makes sure that the scene is going to work. Animation department jumps right on the characters and starts creating the super delicate, fine performances. The environments and sets department creates the entire African savanna, painstakingly, making literally like thousands of plants and trees and rocks and things.
Life's not fair, is it, my little friend?
And then the lighting department and the simulation departments, which add the movement of the water, the movement of the fur, they all come in and they complete the realism so that the world, the character in the world, the way the light works off all those materials, the way every little blade of grass is moving, everything has to be just right.
We're here! Oh, everyone calm down, we're here! The backup has arrived!
At its core, cinema comes from the tradition of illusion and like Méliès and using all of these tools to make the audience believe that they're seeing something that they're not. And that's part of the delight, I think, of seeing something that's effects-driven, especially if there's a wonderful story behind it to carry it through.
You must take your place in the circle of life.
That was fascinating, wasn't it? If you like that, then you might like to watch the full 20-minute chat with Jon Favreau, which is on our YouTube channel. There, he goes into great detail about everything from Iron Man and Star Wars to digital doubles and deepfakes. Well worth a look. youtube.com/BBC Click is the address. Don't forget, we also live on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at BBC Click. Thanks for watching, and we will see you soon.